Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Thursday at the ARC Payments Forum. Today, we've got the Discover Network folks here to give us an update on what's happening with Discover. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Jennifer Watkins, Director of Payments. And with me hosting today is Kevin Haig, the Manager of Payment Processing and Acceptance. And so I'm not going to belabor it. I'm just going to hand it over to Kevin and let him do housekeeping and introductions.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate it. So from a housekeeping perspective, the old antitrust statement. So keep in mind, we are competitors on the phone, and when that occurs, we want to stay away from certain things. Talk about markets, pricing, new products, new territories. Those things should be really kept to the side and not discussed here. All attendees are muted upon entrance. So if you have questions, we're going to handle those at the end, and please place them in the question box, and then we'll address them. Discover was kind enough to allow us to record the session, so we will email that out to everybody afterwards. And if you want a copy of the presentation, just reach out to me, and I'll coordinate with Discover to get that out to you. With that, I'll go to the presenters. We have Chris Chapane with Discover. He's Executive Relationship Manager. Sue Banerjee, Senior Manager of Payment of Products, and Jennifer Taylor, Senior Account Executive, and Christy Russo. So Christy's been with the payment industry for over 15 years, working with companies including Chase Paymentech, First Data, and Bank of America Merchant Services, and now Christy's with Discover. She's been supporting the travel space since 2019. So with that, Christy, I'll hand it off to you.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer and Kevin, for inviting Discover to the ARC Forum today to speak. And welcome, everyone. We did see the initial registration list, and it looks like we have quite a diverse group on the phone today from all different areas. And we're so glad everyone's here. Wish we could be here in person, but hopefully next year. We did see some of the comments on what you guys were hoping to get out of the webinar today. So we're going to cover the following topics. We'll start with an overview of Discover. We'll discuss the importance of data integrity, and we're also going to talk about the option of going full service with your acquirer. Then we'll share some payment trends that we're seeing in the travel space, followed by a very popular request, the topic of fraud. And finally, we're going to end the presentation with a breakdown of Discover Enhanced Decision Making, what it is, what are the benefits, and some results. So with that, let's jump into a little bit about Discover. Most people associate Discover as just simply a credit card. However, it's so much more. So there's really two areas within Discover. There's the Discover Financial Services, which is the banking and payment services side. Discover Card, we offer student loans, personal loans, home equity loans, checking, saving, and CDs. We've even partnered with several airlines to offer pilot student loans. And then the other side is the Discover Global Network. And that's the side that a lot of people are familiar with. But we also own Pulse, which we acquired in 2005, which has over 2005 with ATN debit networks, 2 million in ATMs in over 400 countries, and Diners Club, which we acquired in 2008, which helped us expand our global footprint. And then in addition to that, we have about 20 global alliance partners around the world. And then in addition, Discover is one of the only 2 US card issuers that operates its own network. And we have our own debit capabilities. This unique set of payment assets opens the door to many opportunities for our partners. In this next slide, you can see that Discover Global Network enables cardholders to pay however, whenever, and wherever they choose. Discover Global Network is dedicated to allowing cardholders to have a seamless experience at checkout. We have over 270 million loyal cardholders around the globe, and over 400 billion in global spend opportunity. And since 2005, our international spend has gone up 286%. let's see, did it go to the next slide? Yep, there we go. We have partnered with some of our largest networks in the issuers in the world to facilitate commerce globally, leveraging the Discover network. On the right-hand side, you can see we have over 20 plus global network alliance partners. Some of those are Elo, RuPay, TroyCard, and we also have reciprocal alliances with China UnionPay, JCB. So as long as those merchants accept Discover, they can accept JCB or UnionPay transactions. Speaking of UnionPay, UnionPay is the largest network in terms of cards and volume. Discover partnered with UnionPay in 2005, and it's accepted in 180 countries and territories. We've got 27 trillion in volume processed in 2019, 2.8 million annual Chinese travelers to US spend about 32 billion. And so many of you already accept UnionPay in your direct channel today, but as of 2019, we now have the ability to accept UnionPay through the ARC channel. So we appreciate all that ARC has done to facilitate this. And if you don't accept UnionPay today via ARC, it's really a simple process. You just need to reach out to your ARC representative. You don't want to miss out on the potential volume as the numbers continue to grow. And 4.7 million plus Chinese visitors are expected in the US by 2023. So that's some huge volume. Next on the agenda, we have Jennifer Taylor, who is going to discuss data integrity and acquire full service. Jennifer has been at Discover for over 30 years and currently manages authorization, transaction data integrity, and operational issues related to customer experience in the retail and travel space. Jennifer, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Christy. Appreciate it. So I'm going to talk to you today about data integrity. So as you all know, there are key data elements that are required in a transaction. So those data elements, for our purposes, are required to prevent downgrades. Some examples of those are the network reference ID, the auth response, and the card presence indicator. So these data elements must match between authorization and settlement. So this can be a little tricky, especially in the airline industry with all the different players. We have the GDSs, we have ARC, the online travel agencies, then we have all the different players and systems related to the direct channel sales. So why do we want this information? Well, here at Discover, we all know that better data lessens risk and allows us to make better decisions as the issuer and then as a network. And looking at different data, I've seen many mismatches between auth and settlement. And what happens there is, so if we would, for example, if we would have a difference between auth and settlement and the card presence indicator, if the auth information said that the card customer was present and the settlement said the customer wasn't present, you can see how that would make it difficult for the issuer to make a decision on that transaction. So we can see how that information would be very important in decision making and just basic fraud issues. So that's why we're very interested in making sure that that information is shared with each transaction that's sent to Discover Network. Now I'd like to talk with you about some changes that are happening at Discover. Historically, we have had a model where we had a one-to-one relationship with every merchant, both as an acquirer, we acquired each transaction that happened on our network, and as a network. We're actually changing that model. So we've incorporated an optional acquire full service program. So that has quite a few benefits for our merchants. This allows them to have both settlement and reporting bundled with the other brands. They can use their current acquirer for all card brands, including Discover. And it has efficiency for back office. So they have one report, one settlement for all the brands. And so we're gaining a lot of interest moving to this model. But as you can imagine, there's a lot of moving pieces to get this to actually work. So especially with this industry, as I mentioned, there's many different parts of it, which includes the ARC model where there's the GDSs, there's different agreements that are happening, there's all the different acquirers, which we would have to do, those agreements. I mean, have to do certifications to ensure that everything is working properly before those movements are made. So, we're working with all the different players to make sure that everything is working properly. We have identified a problem, and one of the problems is that, as I mentioned earlier, all that data that we're looking for in the transaction is not being passed in the transactions. So we're seeing that, when those merchants are going to be moved over to the acquirer, or even the merchants that will be staying here at Discover, they would have increased pricing issues because of that information not being passed. So we've identified that issue, and we've also identified a solution. We're working with both ARC and the GDSs to ensure those data elements are being sent properly. So, the issues, the elements like the NRID and the auth response and the card presence indicator, we're working with ARC. We're having meetings with ARC and the GDSs to ensure that that information is being received by all players within the transaction and being presented for each transaction within all the transactions that are being sent. So that all merchants that are either going to the acquire model or staying retained will have the best pricing available on the Discover network. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Christy to announce our next presenter. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. That was extremely informative, and I definitely look forward to working with you on that project and coming up with the solution. Next, we have Chris Chapane, who's going to share some payment trends and fraud data with us. In his 20 years at Discover, Chris has had several project management positions in technology, payment operations, payment pricing, and account management. Chris has spent the last 8 years as an executive relationship manager, primarily managing airlines, car rental, cruise lines, hotels, and online travel agents. Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Christy. It's good to be back here at the ARC Forum. I was asked to discuss a couple things. One, payment trends that we are seeing as a network, as well as some fraud things. And so from a payment trends perspective, when you look back at the history of payments, it's really kind of amazing how it's evolved. I mean, we've literally spent decades taking card imprints, swiping cards, and we've evolved to a marketplace to where we don't even need the plastic anymore. And over the last 5 years, we have really escalated the types of transactions, that are occurring on the network, right? We literally one day spent hundreds of millions of dollars implementing EMV technology, and then the next day we're implementing technology to move people over to card not present type schemes. So payments is moving really fast, and it's our job as a network to support all of it, so that you as a merchant can have a payment system that best suits your needs and your business, and that the customer on the other side has a payment function that they feel comfortable and secure using. So I thought I'd share with you, there's 3 trends that we're seeing that, over the last couple of years have really kind of started to take off. So the first slide you see up here is regards to contactless. And a couple of years ago when I'd present this slide, I'd say, hey, imagine a world where you can't touch anything. How would you possibly pay for things? And of course, given the last year, we've all lived through it. So we don't need to really imagine it. We've kind of been there. And so the timing of contactless really couldn't have been more perfect, right? In 2018, 2019, most issuers, Discover included, were well down the path of converting their card members to contactless cards. Digital wallets like Apple and Google, well established, starting to gain some traction. And right at the end of 2019, the vast majority of retail merchants had implemented the technology, but customers still weren't quite adopting it. It's just, we're so used to pulling the card out and swiping it or dipping it. It was just so much easier to do that. And then COVID hit, and customers were then forced to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to try this contactless thing to avoid as much contact as possible. So it's not surprising when you look at the slide to see that there's an over 200% increase year over year in contactless transactions. So customers are starting to like and to demand this type of transaction. 65% of card members that responded to surveys saying that they wish more merchants had accepted this type of transaction. And if you look at the bottom, you know, this is all really good information. Vast majority of people saying, hey, the lines are shorter, it's quicker, and an overall very positive experience, you know, when using this type of technology. So what does all this mean for travel? What does all this mean for airlines? A lot of airlines are starting to look at this. Some of them have already implemented either on board or in their lounges. We're all waiting for travel to make the comeback. We know it's going to happen. It's slowly starting to happen. But it's something that I would ask the travel industry to consider to meet the needs of their customer. So contactless is one of the things. So if we move to the next slide, the next thing that's really starting to gain traction is the buy now, pay later technology. So this is a trend that's really starting to catch on. There's really three ways in which this is done. You know, traditionally, we had the pre-financing installment payment type options. We're now seeing a lot of these buy now, pay later companies popping up. And these are companies that essentially allow you to take a large value transaction and split it over multiple payments. And there are many companies out there, they're all very similar, but yet different. You know, a traditional credit card payment says, hey, you can buy it now and pay at the end of the month. With these companies, they're saying, hey, buy it now and we'll charge you over a period of X months. And then you're seeing on the issuing side is where there's a lot of issuers that are now doing retroactive financing. So it's, hey, charge the whole thing now, the merchant gets paid 100%, and then they will manage the interest rate and the payments on the back end. So, you know, not surprising here as well, 87% of people that use this for the first time say they have a very positive experience with these types of transactions. Again, in the travel space, these are higher ticket items. A lot of you are have already implemented these types of payment products, but something that's really catching on, something to consider. So if you move to the next slide, then continuing with this topic, 40% of online-centric merchants already have this type of payment option on there. And then there's the millennials, right? We always survey millennials. You know, the millennials, they're not the 22-year-old kid that's out of college anymore, right? They are in their 30s. They are in their prime earning and prime spending years, so we're constantly surveying that group. And so, you know, 73% of millennials state that they would spend more if there was some type of an interest-free installment option was offered. And so, you know, you can see, again, this type of payment product, very positive response to it. All of this is good news for travel. You know, higher ticket items, moving someone from maybe a coach seat to a first class seat, moving somebody, you know, from the first floor to the top floor in the hotel, you know, something to consider, something that we're starting to see gain ground. The last thing that we're seeing is with SRC Click to Pay. So if we move to the next slide, secure remote commerce, or most commonly known as Click to Pay, is starting to make its way back into popularity. This isn't growing nearly as fast as some of the other trends that we had discussed, but you know, remember several years ago, all the credit networks were coming out with their pay buttons. And it was really starting to populate the checkout space with all these online merchants. And so we heard two really strong feedback. One from the merchants saying, hey, this is taking up a lot of real estate. Is there any way we can condense this? And then on the customer side, they were saying, I got to sign up for all of these, and it's kind of cumbersome. And so one of the things that EMVCo then stepped in and said, hey, let's create this universal pay button. We'll call it Click to Pay, so that all the networks can participate. Customers just need to sign up, once and have access to this. And these online tools are great, right? It's no different, some experiences you might have with other products like PayPal or Google Chrome, to where you click the button, it takes your information, it populates it in the fields that are necessary, so you're not having to hand key those in on your phone or your tablet. And there is a slight layer of security with it as well, because when you click the button, there is a secondary authentication that takes place. It is by no means a 3D Secure type security, so don't want to confuse it with that. But anytime you add a layer of authentication, that's always good. So those are kind of the three main trends that we've seen over the last couple of years that are kind of starting to move. So with that, I'll kind of move into fraud then. Last year, when we spoke at the ARC Forum, we were kind of right in the middle of COVID, and we were all dealing with the unraveling stream of chargebacks. Some of them were fraud. Many of them were customer service related, simply because, look, we were trying to all organize our own personal lives, let alone trying to move people from the corporate office, from the call centers, into their homes. And so we all know that the wait times at call centers for all merchants was incredibly difficult. And so customers were calling us and saying, you know what, I can't get through. I just wanted my money back. I'm going to issue a chargeback. And so one of the things that Discover did, which at the end of the day we thought was actually quite helpful, is that we updated our call scripts, put some language in there to just say, hey, we understand this is difficult. Please look at the other side of this. Please try and go back to the merchant and work it out with them before issuing a chargeback. And so we did find that did help reduce the amount of chargebacks come in, but nonetheless, we all know, that we were quite inundated with that. And nonetheless, fraudsters never surprise us, right? Seize the moment when people are down. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see that at the bottom here, this is kind of our credit fraud trend, right? You see in April, it takes a huge dip because nobody was flying. All the airlines, for the most part, were shut down. And then the monster increase coming in May. And that is where the fraudsters say, hey, there's an opportunity, to do some things here. It has since leveled off, and it's difficult to see on this particular chart, but the fraud numbers today are actually below pre-COVID norm. And so if you're looking at credit fraud strictly from that perspective, you'll think, oh, we're in a good shape here, right? The answer is no, right? Fraud still exists, and the fraud will come back. We want to be prepared for it when it does come back. So the reason why the fraud has kind of taken a little bit of a hiatus from a credit perspective is because there's a huge increase in bank fraud with all the stimulus checks going out. Fraudsters have turned their attention to that, and a huge increase in loyalty fraud, right? So especially in the travel industry, a lot of vouchers are being issued, and these are on loyalty accounts that typically don't have a bank account associated with them. So the security to hack into those things are typically a little lighter. And the amount of times in which customers actually go into those accounts, since nobody's traveling, is quite limited. And so fraudsters have kind of turned their attention different ways. And I know a lot of you experience some of this, loyalty fraud with fraudsters going in there, and stealing vouchers from people. And so it's still there. And we want to be clear that, it's not going away, and it will eventually make a comeback. But we have some best practices for you that are going to help prevent that going forward. So here's some of the things that we recommend that you guys consider if you're not doing these already. First off, continue to collaborate with your peers. I know all the conferences are virtual, and traditionally we would be in a room and you could have sidebar conversations and learn from each other. We know that's a little harder to do, but we also know some that still exists. Fraud affects and devastates everyone. If it devastates one of your competitors, it's going to hurt you as well. So continue to cross-collaborate with your peers to help earn some best practices from that. Second thing, flexibility in voucher and refund policies. So airlines had done a really good job at really adapting their programs to make them more customer-centric. One of the things we've seen is that fraudsters have been able to take advantage of that. The ability to log into someone's loyalty account and easily transfer their voucher away from them is something that we started to see. And so our recommendation is to continue with the flexibility. It's best for us, best for you, best for the customer, but add on one layer of authentication, right? We highly recommend to have some type of an email or text verification in place before completing the transfer. So that extra layer can help eliminate some of that fraud. Click to pay, I just spoke about that, so I won't go into that very much. Again, because there's an extra layer of authentication, when you log into that button, you know, an extra layer of authentication is better than none, right? The biggest thing that we recommend is 3D Secure. So Discover Protect By is, you know, an enhanced security protocol that also gives you the liability protection. Many of you have already implemented this. Some of you are still considering implementing this. The thing with 3D Secure is that it does have a bit of a lift on your end. There needs to be a project created. There is a cost associated with the transaction. The data that we have seen very strongly, firmly affirms that the cost and the work effort is worth it in the end, because it does help eliminate some of that fraud. So we do want you to consider that. The other option, on the other hand, is what we call enhanced data decisioning. And I know Sue is going to dig a little deeper into this in a minute. If you do not have the ability or the resources to put into a 3DS type transaction, enhanced data decisioning is a much lighter lift. It is free of charge and can have a more positive effect on authorizations, accepting good authorizations, prevention of declining good authorizations, as well as, you know, preventing fraud. So with that, I will send it back to Christy, and we can talk a little bit more about enhanced data decisioning. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Definitely appreciate you sharing that enlightening payment trends and great best practices for preventing fraud. I know that's a very hot topic. Next, we have Sue Banerjee, and Sue's going to talk to us about enhanced decisioning, Discover Enhanced Decisioning. Sue is a senior manager of payment products at Discover Global Network. During her 8 years at Discover, she has led the project development, business strategy, and marketing, driving transformation and profitable growth for their credit card and consumer banking decisions. Currently, she leads product strategy for Discover Global Network fraud management products, supporting merchants, acquirers, and issuers across APAC, EMEA, and North American regions. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sue.
Thank you, Chris. We're getting a pretty bad echo. I wasn't sure if it was Christy or Sue. So maybe we could do like a quick sound check on Sue.
Okay. Are you able to hear me?
Yes. Yeah. I think maybe it was Christy. So let's jump over to Sue. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy. Hi, everyone. It's my first time presenting at the ARC Forum, and I'm very excited to talk to you all today about our new Discover Enhanced Decisioning fraud management product. So as Chris has been talking, we all have been in this COVID pandemic for over a year now, and all of us have experienced significant changes in every aspect of our lives. The payments industry itself has gone through some big changes, including a major shift from cash and card present payments to online card not present payments. And as card not present spend has continued to increase, so has card not present fraud. And merchants are always trying to balance fraud losses without compromising their customer experience. Now, to deal with increased card-not-present fraud losses, issuers have put in place stricter fraud controls that are resulting in many legitimate transactions getting blocked by the very same systems that are designed to catch fraud. And these are called false positives or false declines. And they take up about 20% of all rejected online transactions. So you must be wondering, then how can we reduce false declines? And that's where Discover Enhanced Decisioning comes in. Enhanced Decisioning allows merchants to send additional customer data to issuers as part of the authorization message. And then issuers can take this additional transaction data in real time to make a more informed decision whether to approve or decline the transaction. Now, let me explain that using a real life scenario. So with COVID restrictions finally easing up in most parts of the world, you may be looking to book that long-awaited trip. And I was just reading somewhere that about 60% of people surveyed are actually planning to take a trip this year. So you go and find an awesome vacation package at an online travel site, and you're ready to book. You enter your travel dates, your personal information, your credit card details, and you click buy, and then all of a sudden you get a credit card decline message. This is not something you were expecting, and as a customer, obviously you are frustrated. And this happens due to the fact that you have never purchased at this online travel site before, and your purchase amount is also pretty large. So your credit card issuer declined the purchase thinking it was made by a fraudster. Now with Discover Enhanced Decisioning, what this merchant can do is they can share some additional information about you, like your email address or your phone number, your IP address, with the issuer, which will then allow them to confirm that you are a legitimate customer and the transaction is valid, so resulting in an approved transaction. Now, enhanced decisioning, it's a win-win-win scenario for all parties involved. So from a customer point of view, you can make a purchase without being falsely declined, while you stay protected from fraud when a fraudster is trying to make a purchase. From a merchant point of view, risky transactions are being blocked, lowering fraud losses, while valid transactions are approved, leading to increased sales. And finally, from issuer point of view, genuine transactions are approved, leading to a great cardholder experience while reducing future disputes. So who's participating currently? So this product is available to Discover Network, and Discover Card is participating. And from a merchant and acquiring standpoint, both domestic and international merchants and acquirers are eligible to participate. And we currently have Stripe, who's participating with 1,100 plus merchants. And just to remind everyone, this applies to card-not-present transactions only. Next slide, please. So I talked a little bit about the benefits already, but let's just focus on what are the benefits from a merchant and acquiring side. So the biggest benefits are reduced fraud and increased approval rate. Now, our value proposition includes reduced friction, which is lower false positive, resulting in a smoother checkout experience with less friction for customers. Since enhanced decisioning operates completely in the background, it will not disrupt your customer's online checkout experience. And also, it does not require any step-up authentication like a one-time password or something. And also, it helps with increased revenue. So risky transactions are being blocked while valid transactions are approved, leading to higher approval rates due to greater confidence. And smarter fraud detection, which can lead to lower fraud loss and lower fraud-related false declines for merchants. Now, the biggest value prop that I like to talk about is our faster implementation. So this product leverages our existing Discover Global Network region authorization infrastructure to receive and process data from merchants. So the additional data fields, which I'll talk about in a minute, are already part of the authorization message today. So there is no need for you to create any new fields. Once merchants decide which data fields they would like to share with the issuer, they can work with their acquirer directly to certify those data fields And once the certification is complete, merchants can start sending data to issuer. Next, this is a free solution with no cost for merchants to participate at this time. And finally, merchants do not need to collect any new data from customers, since this additional data is already collected as part of a customer's online checkout process. Next slide, please. Okay. So how does Discover Enhanced Decisioning does it? So it leverages issuer machine learning models to connect a broad range of customer and transaction data with their spending patterns using a risk-based authorization approach. So when a customer makes a purchase at an online store, they already provide information like shipping and billing information, phone number, email to the merchant. Now, participating merchants can choose to send all or some of this additional customer data to the issuer at the time of authorization. And then issuer can compare this additional data with customer spending patterns and usage, merchant profiles, and other data sources to better assess risk and distinguish between a valid transaction and a fraudulent one. Now, on this table on the slide, you can see on the left, we have some of the standard data fields that are already populated by merchants as part of the authorization message. So this is not a list of all the fields, but this is just a sample. And on the right, what you can see are the enhanced data, what we are calling the enhanced data fields. These are part of the enhanced decisioning product. So merchants can choose to send any number of data fields from this list: email address, billing and shipping address, phone number, and IP address. Again, it is up to the merchants which fields they want to send. They don't have to send all of these. They can send just one if they want to. And obviously, more fields are likely to result in a more accurate decision. And finally, this is a question that may come from a merchant standpoint. They may be, they may be there may be some apprehension in terms of sharing how much data to share with the issuer. But these fields will be only used for decisioning purposes by the issuer and no other reason. Next slide, please. So Chris touched a little bit on the 3D Secure Protect By product that we have. So I wanted to also kind of do a comparison between this new enhanced decisioning product and the 3D Secure. So first, I want to mention that these are complementary products. So if a merchant, if you're already using 3D Protect By, you can still use this enhanced decisioning. And you can see I have put the main difference between these two products that I want to point out is enhanced 3D Secure offers a fraud liability shift for the merchants. And I know that's very important to the merchants, and 3D Secure does offer that. But enhanced decisioning does not offer a fraud liability shift, meaning if you are using enhanced decisioning and if there is a fraud, you'll still be liable for that chargeback. But on the flip side, enhanced decisioning, the lift to get this product, use this product is really, really small. That's because, again, like I mentioned, the fields that are part of this product that are already in the authorization message. So there is no need to create anything new. Only thing that needs to happen is you'll need to certify for those fields before you start populating them. And the other difference is that 3D Secure is a fee product, but enhanced decisioning is free to use. But we can see that how they can be complementary to each other is that, if you have a big ticket item, like someone is making a $1,000, $2,000 purchase for an international trip, so in those cases, the data, you can send it to the 3D Secure. But if the average ticket item is smaller, like a $200 ticket, something like that, you can use enhanced decisioning for those transactions. And what happens is once you use enhanced decisioning, the issuer already collects that data and it has it. So the next time that customer comes in and books a bigger trip with a bigger purchase amount, they will already know that this is the genuine customer, and they will be approving that transaction instead of like more step-up authentication or a straight decline. So that's how these two products can be complementary to each other. Next slide. So finally, I wanted to share some results with you. So like I mentioned, Stripe is currently participating in enhanced decisioning, and they started working with us late 2020. So we have about 3 or 4 months of data from this. And they started sending only email address at the beginning. So like I said, the merchant can choose which data field to share. So they only started with email address, and just last month, they have also started sending the IP address. But you can see the result that is just from the one field email address are really positive. So what Stripe has seen is a 25% reduction in false positive or false declines that are it happens from the issuer side. So that's a huge number, 25% reduction, and that too with no increase in fraud. So the fraud amount has stayed the same. So there has not been any increase in fraud losses after using enhanced decisioning. So both of these results are very promising, and I would say, we, as Stripe currently is working on sending more data, I'm sure these results will only improve from here. So just to end, sum up, so the enhanced decisioning, this product is available for use today. And if you are interested in learning more, please reach out to Chris. And thank you everybody for your time. So I'll just hand it over to Christy now.
Great, thank you, Sue, appreciate that. And thank you again to all the presenters today. At this time, we'd like to go ahead and open it up to any questions that are out there. So Kevin or Jennifer, if there are any questions, definitely, please let us know.
We do have some questions.
Yes. And,
go ahead, Kevin.
I have one from one of our GDSs regarding the decisioning or the enhanced data. And I think it's more of a clarification maybe. So with the enhanced data, you talked a lot about the authorization process. But do any of those additional data elements pass through and required for settlement? Because that's really where the ARC play comes in when that data is required for settlement. So if you can clarify that, that would be great.
As far as I know, they're retained for settlement, but I would like to take that back and confirm with the team.
Okay, great.
So I do have a question about the data integrity initiatives. We are getting some feedback. I don't know who it is, but if you have your mic on twice or are online and on the phone, just mute one of them. Maybe that's a start. Around data integrity. And so I think just to clarify for the airlines that are on the call right now, I think from a data integrity perspective, there is an exemption for airlines right now. Do you anticipate that that will change at some point? I don't know if that's for Jennifer or Chris or Keith.
Yeah, so I think I'll grab that one. So right now, well, let me rephrase it. We would like to get to a point to where we could change that and get the data integrity complete, right? So right now, there are some exemptions out there for that, simply because we know there's some work that needs to be done in a couple different places to make that happen. We would like to work towards a path to complete that, get the proper information that we're looking for so that we can remove those waivers and get everybody transacting the same way. So at this point, we don't have any target to remove that, but we eventually will want to get down the road and make that happen.
Okay. I'm going to ask this question from an acquirer. So we have an acquirer that's asking whether or not the current Discover push to have airline ARC volume move through the acquirer for processing. Will these pass through and Discover still liable for the chargebacks and fraud, or does Discover expect the acquirer to hold that liability in the pass-through model?
Yeah, so essentially what we would look for is to have these airlines go full service the same way you do any other merchant. And so that chargeback that authorization, that settlement would all run through your system. So from a liability perspective, you now become the acquirer. And so that would go on you.
Okay. Okay.
We have another question out there about PSD2 and regulations for Europe, and what's Discover doing, or how's Discover working with European regulations?
Yeah, so I can tell you that the group we have here is primarily Discover Network US-based focus. So that would be a question for our Diners International group that manage our international. So PSD2 is something that is unavoidable, so I know we're on top of it. I just can't speak exactly to it. So if there's a specific question on that, we can absolutely take that back and get an answer for you.
Okay.
Okay, good. Question about click to pay, just a clarification. The question is it like an in-app, is it only for an in-app payment? Like, is it only for tablet or phone, or is it something that's also available just in a regular internet transaction?
Yeah, absolutely available on the internet. You can go to webpage. There's some merchants that have it rolled out already, but you can use that on the internet, phone, mobile device, any online transaction, so to speak.
Okay.
We have
go ahead, Kevin.
There's a question out there, Chris, and they're asking you to put on or pull out your crystal ball. So do you think credit cards may be irrelevant in 5 to 10 years?
Oh, man. Well, I guess what's the definition of a credit card is what I would ask. Is it a piece of plastic? Then maybe there's a better chance that might happen. But in general, the credit component is not going to go away. It's only growing. Right? People don't pay with cash anymore. So what your definition of credit card is, or it's on whether that'll disappear or not. But the credit function will definitely be there. The physical plastic may not be. I don't know.
I noticed Keith took himself off mute. Do you want to add to that, Keith?
Yeah, sure. I back completely what Chris just said. I think, although there's obviously a lot of changes and additional options for the way people pay, one of the things that's always got to be there is a bank or a financial institution that's backing that payment one way or the other. I don't see, there's attempts, obviously in different ways, cryptocurrencies and other things that might attempt to dislodge banks from that, but I don't see the trust factor changing that much over the next several years. Not that cryptocurrency would go away, but just that I don't see the way it could replace credit. Obviously, debit has become a big way to pay, but one thing I know from serving some of our international markets is outside the U.S., debit is very, very popular. It has grown in popularity in the U.S., but the services that people get from credit cards or credit accounts, as Chris alluded to, doesn't necessarily have to be a card. People in the U.S. love it, and I don't see a reason for a lot of that to change.
Okay. I do have sort of a comment. I thought the section that Sue did about enhanced authorization is interesting. There's clearly work for us to do as an industry around data integrity that involves the GDSs and acquirers, because if we're going to be outputting transactions to acquirers, everyone's going to have to make sure the data gets passed through. We have some practice in this because the other card brands require it already. So I think there's some big discussions that are going to need to happen with GDSs and ARC and acquirers around that. But I think it also includes maybe the enhanced authorization piece. It'd be great to be able to offer that in the agency channel as well. But obviously, it's going to require changes by the GDS at the time of authorization. So I think those are a couple top sort of takeaways for us all to work more closely with the industry to solve. Ooh, I had another point and now I've lost it. Ooh, yeah, but it'll come back to me, I think.
Must not have been important.
What other questions? Do we have any other questions out there? We did have one. I think that you clarified, Chris, that SRC, Secure Remote Commerce, and 3DS are two different things. You can do a SRC transaction and then add on 3D Secure, but they're not sort of one and the same.
Correct. From a fraud perspective, we throw SRC out there as a layer. It is a thin layer, and the only layer is because it does require an additional authentication. And that's assuming that the password that you logged onto your account with is different than what you have your SRC password is, right? So that's a snag. So anytime you have an extra layer of authentication, it's always good, but it's not a big fraud product that will solve your problems.
Yeah.
But it helps.
So we didn't talk much about JCB, but JCB is one of the sort of larger payment options that go through Discover, and ARC has enabled it for many airlines. I mean, most of the airlines that just accept Discover accept JCB through ARC. Union Pay, we have a little ways to go. So we've got 2 airlines, I think, right now that accept, actually, I think it's 3, that accept Union Pay as a form of payment through ARC. If there are airlines on the call that are interested in accepting Union Pay, reach out to Kevin or I, and we'll work with our operations team, Kathy Derringer, to get that enabled. Yeah, we'd like to see more of that. We see transactions coming from the GDS from time to time that end up going into error within our system because it's not a valid form of payment, and it's because it's on Union Pay and that airline isn't accepting Union Pay as a form of payment. So
yeah,
we're committed to helping you.
Yeah, no, I just want to echo that, and I know it's something Christy had discussed. Look, every airline setup is different, so some could be more complex than others, but most of the feedback we had from some of the airlines we've worked with is that it is not a very difficult process. There were some airlines that have told us, well, this is a big deal, we don't have time for it, but then once they get into it, they're like, oh, that was simple. So I think there was one that was set up within a week or 2. So we ask that you at least reach out to your ARC rep and just investigate what it would take. It's acceptance that I think really benefits all of us. So yeah,
and the GDSs are ready, I think, for the most part. So it's enabled. It's just a matter of the airline turning it on. Yeah. So my question was around clearly buy now, pay later is growing. I mean, it was actually millennials were doing it prior to COVID, but I think it's grown during COVID. I think I read that you all have a partnership with Sezzle. What is that? What does that look like? Can you share a little more information about that?
Yeah, I can jump in on that. So yeah, we have a partnership with Sezzle. It's really just sort of a referral arrangement where obviously we have a lot of relationship managers covering the larger merchants in the U.S. So we work to introduce them to some of our clients. However, we do work with other buy now, pay later solutions. We're investigating a lot of those right now. I mean, there really are. It's a little bit of the wild, wild west with this solution. They're all doing things, I was going to say slightly differently, but they're really doing things very significantly different. So, our goals obviously are to work and help any of our clients get on board with those types of payments. But also, very importantly, is we're working with them to make sure that the data is sent to us in the cleanest way possible. And we've all seen it when new products hit the payments industries, and typically they come out before any of the big networks like Discover, Visa, MasterCard have really worked with them to endorse them. So data just comes in a bit of a haphazard way. And so we're trying to get in front of it and work with these partners to make sure we get a uniform way that information is sent to us. That's a benefit to us. It's a benefit to you all, the merchants. It's a benefit to ARC, so you don't have to do it 10 different ways for 10 clients when you're in the mix. So we are pushing to ensure some sort of uniformity in this burgeoning industry.
I will mention that we have a panel, that starts at noon today, about payment trends and consumer behavior at the point of sale. And Sezzle's on that panel. So it's just a little plug. There is a Discover Sezzle partnership there, and we'll be hearing from Sezzle later on today on that panel to talk about buy now, pay later.
Great.
We are getting close to time. Kevin, do you have any questions or?
No, I don't see any questions coming in.
So Chris, if you were an agency or an airline, coming out of COVID, we're going to see, I think, probably some new trends in fraud. Do you have any suggestions for what everyone should be looking out for?
Well, I think it's just going to be a lot of the old tricks, right? I mentioned in my presentation that the fraudsters have kind of turned their head to some of this because there are better opportunities for them. But it's going to come back to credit card fraud. We highly recommend 3D Secure as an option. That is, in our opinion, that's the best way to combat it. And so that's probably our best recommendation to solving that. What they're going to do, if I knew what they were going to do, I could tell you exactly how to stop it. But these guys are smarter than me, so they can only use their knowledge for good and not evil. But that's what I would go with. That's our best recommended approach. But there are other fraud tools that can help some of that as well. If 3D Secure just isn't an option right now.
Yep. I think that's another opportunity for us to work with the GDS and acquirers, because we haven't been able to make that work in the agency channel for Discover. So we're all going to have to get in a room and work these things out, figure out how we make 3D Secure work, how we do enhanced authorization, and how we improve our data integrity, which is a big focus for ARC. And Kevin in particular, he's our data guru. Just try to improve the flow of data and the transaction process. But 3D Secure is another one of those we'd like to see if we can find a solution for.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. If there are no other questions, we are close to time. So I think we will wrap it up. Thank you very much, Sue, Christy, Chris, Jennifer, Keith, for joining us. Discover, fantastic partners of ours. Really appreciate you joining us today. Great content, and looking forward to working out the details on some of these in the coming year, and obviously meeting face to face next year. And did anyone want to wrap up Discover?
No, I would just say thanks for having us, and let's do this in person next year. Let's do it.
Yes. All right. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.